Hey everyone, welcome back to AP World History Review. Today we're diving deep into Unit 7, Topic 5, the unresolved tensions that simmered and boiled over after World War I. The Great War was supposed to be the war to end all wars, but, as we'll see, its aftermath created a whole new set of problems that would eventually lead us straight into World War II. So, grab your notebooks and let's get started. First, let's talk about the big one, the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty, signed in 1919, officially ended the war, but it was incredibly harsh on Germany. The Allies, especially France and Britain, wanted revenge and security. They forced Germany to accept full blame for the war through the infamous War Guilt Clause. Imagine being told an entire global conflict was solely your fault. This created immense resentment among the German people. On top of that, Germany was hit with massive reparations payments, crippling their already devastated economy. We're talking billions of dollars. They also had their military severely restricted, no air force, a tiny navy, and a small army. And to top it all off, Germany lost significant territory, including Alsace-Lorraine back to France and chunks of land that formed the new nation of Poland. This combination of blame, debt, and humiliation created a fertile breeding ground for extremist ideologies. It's no surprise that leaders like Adolf Hitler would later use this treaty as a powerful tool for propaganda, promising to restore German honor and tear up the dictated peace. But Germany wasn't the only one unhappy. Italy, despite being on the winning side, felt cheated. They had been promised territorial gains in the Treaty of London, but they didn't get nearly as much as they expected at the Paris Peace Conference. This feeling of a mutilated victory fueled nationalist anger and contributed to the rise of Benito Mussolini and his fascist party. They felt they had sacrificed so much for so little reward. And what about Japan? Another one of the Allies? Japan also left Paris feeling slighted. They wanted a racial equality clause included in the League of Nations Covenant, but Western powers, particularly the United States and Australia, rejected it. This rejection was a major insult, and reinforced the belief in Japan that the Western powers would never see them as equals. This fueled Japanese militarism and their ambition to create their own empire in Asia, free from Western dominance. So, we have three major powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, all leaving the peace process with a serious chip on their shoulder. These are our Axis powers in the making. Now, let's shift our focus to the new political landscape. The end of World War I saw the collapse of major empires, the Austro-Hungarian, the Ottoman, the German, and the Russian empires. In their place, a bunch of new countries were created, especially in Eastern and Central Europe. Think about Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia. The idea championed by U.S. President Woodrow Wilson was self-determination, that nations should have the right to govern themselves. It sounds great in theory, right? But the reality was messy. These new borders were drawn by the Allied powers, often with little regard for the complex ethnic and cultural realities on the ground. For example, Czechoslovakia was home to Czechs, Slovaks, Germans, Hungarians, and others. Yugoslavia was a volatile mix of Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, and more. Millions of people suddenly found themselves as ethnic minorities in new countries, often facing discrimination. The Sudetenland, a region of Czechoslovakia with a large German-speaking population, is a perfect example of a flashpoint that Hitler would later exploit. These ethnic tensions within the new states of Europe created instability from the very beginning. Then there's the League of Nations. This was Woodrow Wilson's grand vision for an international organization that would prevent future wars through collective security. The idea was that if one country attacked another, all members of the League would team up to stop the aggressor. A noble idea, but it was doomed from the start. Why? Well, for one, the United States, the country that proposed it, never even joined. The U.S. Senate refused to ratify the Treaty of Versailles, wanting to return to a policy of isolationism. Without the world's rising economic and military power, the League was like a car without an engine. Furthermore, the League had no military force of its own. It could only impose economic sanctions, which were often ineffective. When major powers like Japan, Italy, and Germany started their aggressive expansion in the 1930s, the League was essentially powerless to stop them. It could condemn their actions, but that was about it. Japan's invasion of Manchuria in 1931 and Italy's invasion of Ethiopia in 1935 exposed the League's weakness for all to see. Now, let's turn our attention to the global economy. The war had devastated Europe's economies, and the United States emerged as the world's leading creditor and industrial power. Throughout the 1920s, a fragile system of international finance was held together by American loans, especially to Germany, which helped them pay their reparations to Britain and France, who in turn used that money to pay back their own war debts to the U.S. It was a precarious cycle. Then, in 1929, the Wall Street crash happened, triggering the Great Depression. American banks collapsed, loans dried up, and the whole system came crashing down. The Depression wasn't just an American problem, it went global. Countries turned inward, raising tariffs to protect their own industries, which only made the global economic crisis worse. Widespread unemployment and economic desperation created a perfect storm for political extremism. In times of crisis, people often look for strong leaders who offer simple solutions to complex problems. In Germany, the economic collapse made Hitler's promises to restore the economy and provide jobs seem incredibly appealing. In Japan, the military argued that expansion and securing resources were the only way to survive the economic downturn. The Great Depression essentially destroyed any remaining international cooperation and pushed nations further down the path to conflict. Finally, we need to talk about the colonies. While the concept of self-determination was being thrown around for European nations, it was not applied to the millions of people living under colonial rule in Africa and Asia. Colonial soldiers from India, Africa, and Southeast Asia had fought and died for their imperial rulers in World War I, and many hoped their service would be rewarded with greater freedom or even independence. They were bitterly disappointed. The mandate system, created by the League of Nations, was a prime example of this hypocrisy. Former German colonies and Ottoman territories in the Middle East weren't granted independence. Instead, they were handed over to Britain and France as mandates to be governed until they were ready for self-rule. For many, this just looked like colonialism with a new name. In the Middle East, for instance, the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secret deal between Britain and France to carve up the region, led to the creation of artificial borders for countries like Iraq and Syria, ignoring tribal and religious lines and planting the seeds for future conflict that continues to this day. This betrayal fueled anti-colonial movements and nationalist sentiments across the globe, from India's independence movement led by Gandhi to burgeoning resistance in Africa and Southeast Asia. The promise of a new world order after the war rang hollow for a vast portion of the world's population. So, let's recap the key unresolved tensions. 1. The harsh and punitive Treaty of Versailles created deep resentment in Germany and feelings of betrayal in Italy and Japan. 2. The creation of new ethnically diverse states in Europe led to widespread minority issues and instability. 3. The League of Nations proved to be a weak and ineffective body, unable to enforce peace. 4. The Great Depression shattered the global economy and fueled the rise of aggressive nationalist regimes. And 5. The continuation of colonialism under the mandate system sparked widespread anti-colonial and nationalist movements. Each of these tensions was a piece of dry kindling. The aggressive actions of revisionist powers in the 1930s provided the spark, and the world was soon engulfed in the flames of another global conflict. The war to end all wars had done anything but. It had simply set the stage for an even more devastating sequel. Understanding these unresolved tensions is crucial for understanding why World War II happened. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more AP World Review content. See you next time.